This is the sluggo, slant and go.
It's called sluggo.
Casey the Beef Cregan, just like every Wednesday. Oh, wait a second. Just for the second time, I was looking today. Can you believe it? This is only our second show since December the 1st. It's been like 6 weeks. I think we didn't know it, but we joined a union.
What the?
The union says you can't work more than twice in 6 weeks, but it's good to be back with you, Case. We were talking pre-show, and we got so used to 110 shows in about 115 weeks. It seemed like through COVID and pandemics and whatever. And then we kind of had a little break there over Christmas. I got busy all of a sudden. We were talking about that pre-show, and you're always busy driving around the country. Driving around the country. Got a young son and stepson, so. Been a while.
Anthony Weeks, good to see him. He's in here. He started a new deal, The Boys, I think it's called. It's good.
And
to
there's
see
Kevron.
Good to see him too.
Hey Anthony, don't you worry, Anthony. We got Garrett Riley on the mind, and that'll come up.
Never heard of him.
I sent Beef the rundown, and he was like, "Yes, sir. Let's do it." I thought he was going to hit me. He's like Brent Venables there, ready to rock and roll. Good to see you, Anthony and Kevron. Hey, Beef, I don't know about at your house, but at my house, I handle the technology for the most part. Now, if I need to remember a password or something like that, Parker's always good. My mind is old and decrepit, and I can't remember what I have for breakfast. Parker, I asked him the other day, and that fits into the story. He can remember the Wi-Fi password. I got it stamped on my forehead. Ring doorbell went down last week, and we can't live without the Ring at this house because despite it being illegal to go door to door selling stuff, people still do it, especially home security folks. They're infamous in the neighborhood. So anyway, Ring doorbell went down. No problem. I fixed it 150 times before. I'll fix it this time. Probably just needs to be recharged. Recharge the battery. No. Okay. Recharge the recharged battery. No. Nothing's worked. Couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is working. I know because it's on my phone because I needed the phone to connect to the thing to tell me it wasn't working. So finally, what I always tell my wife is when I'm fixing something around the house and I start talking, I'm not talking to her, right? I'm not asking her the questions. I'm asking myself the questions. So I have gently requested over the years that she leave me the hell alone when I'm when I'm working on something, right? And she has obliged, much to her credit, she's obliged. So she left me the hell alone. I still couldn't figure it out. So I walked away. I went back the next day, still couldn't figure it out. I'm like, what the heck? And then I got online, did the research. Okay. Anyway, long story short, the second day I walked away again, said, this sucks. I'll just go buy a new one, right? I'll just get a whole new one because I can't get this thing to work. 20 minutes later, she goes out the front door to go for a walk, and it captures her on the Ring doorbell, and it worked. So I don't know.
I fixed it.
That's what I took credit for sure. But anyway, I couldn't remember the password. This is where Parker fits in. I couldn't remember the Wi-Fi password because it's saved in everything. And he knew it right off the top of his head. Now, he don't know what he learned in math class 2 hours before that, but he knows the Wi-Fi password. Teenagers, man, teenagers.
That's good stuff right there. We had a Ring doorbell in New Jersey, and I just charged it. That's all I knew how to do.
That's all I do, really. I know how to take the screw out the faceplate and charge it, but it asked for more, and I couldn't do it.
I turned it off because every car that drove by, and I know you could. But we're in New Jersey, it was like postage stamp lots. So if I wanted to get my yard, I had to get a little bit of the road. Yeah, it was like every time. And I'm like, I need to not have that chime anymore.
Ours goes off sometimes when the sun comes from behind the clouds. That's how sensitive it is. Yeah.
It's good. It's a good system.
Ain't nobody sneaking by that dang thing. That's
We'd be more than happy to rep them on this show.
Yes, no doubt. We'll rep anybody. Axe murderer. Well, it's really good. Okay, championship game, Georgia edged TCU. I watched about 7 minutes of this game and knew it was over. You know, sometimes you go like, hey, I mean, like Jacksonville last week, you know, you never know. So you stick around, you watch it, and things happen. Seems like that's happened quite a few times this year in the NFL. The 33-0 game at halftime, Jacksonville down 27-0, but Georgia just crushed TCU in the championship game. Georgia looked really good. Three-peat or?
Yeah, their schedule next year is another joke of a schedule, and this is, you know, me and my soapbox. I feel like you're setting me up here, but the fact that everyone loves and talks about nonstop how good the SEC is. Take a look at Georgia's schedule next year. They're out of conferences like I don't know, Kyle High School, Seton Hall Prep, and somebody else. I mean, it's atrocious. They're 3 out of conference games. I think they have a MAC team in there, a SoCon team, and then they don't have any real cross rival except I think Mississippi State, but they miss LSU, they miss Alabama, and I think they miss Ole Miss as well. So it's not all that looking difficult. And I took a look at their, I don't know, I'm stuttering tonight. I got to get back in the groove, Marty. I took a look at their roster too at the quarterback position because Stetson Bennett, the 9th, cannot come back next year. He's done. He's exhausted all of his eligibility. But they have a 5-star and 2 4-stars behind him, as well as Jackson Muschamp, who I think was a 3-star. So they're on paper they're loaded again. They're losing some guys to the transfer portal, which is a little odd to see. I don't know if they're starters or not, but they're set up for a three-peat. Yes.
They play, got it here, UT Martin. That one's at Georgia, by the way. Ball State.
At Georgia.
Another MAC team, South Carolina. UAB. UAB. Auburn. At Auburn. Kentucky at home. At Vanderbilt. Could be a toughie. Florida, you know that's going to be in Jacksonville. Then Missouri and Ole Miss at home. They finished up on the road at Tennessee and at Georgia Tech. Sounds like 12-0.
Yeah, they're not going to get challenged again until December, really, and that's probably in the SEC championship, or maybe Tennessee. Maybe we'll see. I don't know what they have coming back. They better shore up the defense. I know as Clemson fans, we wish we saw our offense kind of finish drives, but they got to shore up the defense if they're going to try to stop Georgia.
For sure. John Chansey says maybe a lack of challenges in the regular season leads to complacency. Well, they almost lost to Missouri this year. They had a couple of closer games, but man, they look so good. And last impressions shouldn't be, you know, your overall impression, but they just looked dominant. Now we know TCU, Big 12 team, had a lot of luck to go undefeated or one loss in the championship game, the Big 12 championship game. I'm not saying they weren't good. I'm not saying they didn't deserve to be there. I'm just saying they won a lot of close games.
Yeah, and there was probably 6 or 7 games in there that could have gone either way, but that's what Cinderella does. It's not their fault that they put it on Michigan in the semifinal. I mean, myself included, thought it was going to be Michigan and Georgia in the final, and they beat them. So, I mean, people that are saying that they didn't deserve to be there, I'm sorry, you're wrong. And they did. Unfortunately, they lost by 58 points in the final, and everyone that I know turned it off. So it stinks for them. I am too, and I would have never done it. My wife was about to cook up some like cheese and you know, queso and chips and buffalo chicken dip, and both me and her oldest were like, "Nah, we're good." And that was like literally 7 minutes in the game, even after TCU scored. Save
the dip. Anthony Weeks says Gunnar Stockton should be a front runner for QB1. You know, if you remember, I don't know if you remember this, but when Clemson had their run in 2015, They didn't lose by 58, but they won, I think it was 6 games, -2 in turnovers. So and I calculated it out as like 1 in 200 and something thousand odds of winning 6 games when you're -2 in turnovers. Won every one of them. Just couldn't overcome the onside kick that Nick Saban cooked up.
And the tight end, good Lord, I still have nightmares.
I think he just ran over another Clemson defensive back.
Between him and Geno Smith, I haven't slept in years.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, I think Anthony, Kevron, and maybe even John Chancey are here to talk a little Clemson football. Obviously, the big news, your best friend Brandon Streeter got fired. That's a joke. He's not Casey's best friend. That would be Zach Locks Parker. But I'm presuming there. But Brandon Streeter got fired. Garrett Riley got hired. And TCU fans are happy because they didn't think Garrett Riley was that good. Anyway, apparently, according to your other podcast or screenshots that will be on your other podcast probably. But Garrett Riley's the new offensive coordinator. I'm going to have a story tomorrow on rubbingtherock.com. That is rubbingtherock.com about now that the expectations are really high. I could never get 96.9% of Clemson fans to agree on anything. They agreed that their expectations for next year have been raised because of the hire of Garrett Riley as offensive coordinator. John Chancey had a great story about who's going to benefit the most from Garrett Riley, the change in the offensive coordinator. Houston Burnett wrote a story on rubbingtherock.com about reinventing the offense. So there's a lot of positive energy, to use your term today, on the baseball team around Garrett Riley being hired as the offensive coordinator. And my only point in tomorrow's article is that's all great, and I'm happy, and I'm too looking forward to it. But now it actually needs to happen.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that. I think, and Clemson fans may laugh at me, but I remember when Rob Spence was hired, and he brought this new kind of newfangled offense that was hot and high flying, and people forget about Rob Spence, but it didn't work. It didn't work at all. But I was really excited to sit there on a spring game and watch the offense, and it was great. It was exciting because we had these expectations. So my message to Clemson fans is you need to temper it a little bit. I think he's going to bring a new fun style of offense, but it's going to look a little familiar. I truly believe, and I did actually do some research on this, Marty. I know. I think as Anthony Weeks said here, I think Antonio Williams is going to be used more. I think the tight ends are probably going to be used more, but he still runs these bubble screens. The thing I really like about his offense is that he runs wrinkles off of that. So whereas Clemson in the past might have been a little bit complacent, they might have been predictable, where a guy like me could predict where it was going. Now it's kind of a thinking man's football, if you will. I'm excited for it, but I'm going to temper my expectations, especially like when it comes around April at the spring game. And Cade doesn't throw for 380, and Will Shipley doesn't run for 175 yards and 17 touchdowns. Like, I'm going to temper it a little bit. I think it's going to take him a little bit to obviously practice to install it, but don't be surprised if you see a little bit of the same, but yet taking chances. I think the personnel helps that too.
John Chancey says Cole Turner, he almost added to that slideshow, and that's somebody to watch next year, right? It's, whatever, he throw the ball in the general area, that dude caught it. That's all we've seen. That's all we've seen from him. So we'll see how Cole Turner plays out. But I do think definitely Antonio Williams, he thrived in a not great offense. Can you imagine what he would do with like Deshaun or Trevor back there? Or hopefully Cade when he develops a little more. I saw a story about, I don't remember who it was. One of the Texas Tech quarterbacks, when Mike Leach passed away, talked about why the air raid was so great. And he said the offense lets the quarterback make the decision, right? They have like 4 plays. Now, I'm not saying that's what Garrett Riley's running. I'm just talking about the air raid in general. They have like 4 plays, and they leave it up to the quarterback with what he sees, right? And that could change the play, obviously. And this quarterback said, when I was a freshman, I hated it. He said, but by the time I was a senior, I loved it because he got to make the decisions and he got to decide who was going. He wasn't pinned down to this one play. So we'll see how it plays out with Clemson. But I just thought that was interesting that Moore's going to be on the quarterback. From what I know of Klubnik from his time here in the Austin area at Westlake, he can handle it. It's going to take, obviously he was a freshman, and we saw a lot of that this year. Well, we didn't see a lot of it because he didn't play a lot till the end, but we saw some of it when he played. He was a freshman, a true freshman, kind of overwhelmed at times. But I think the growth will be remarkable. And with Garrett Riley, nothing against Streeter, but with Garrett Riley as a quarterback's coach, you're going to see a big leap for Cade Klubnik in 23.
Now, take this for what you will, for what it's worth, really. I have a really good friend, and Lux and I both have a really good friend that's a high school coach in this state of South Carolina. And he looked at us one night at dinner and basically recently and said, if you don't think Dabo's got his hands all over that offense, you're lying to yourself. So I think Streeter may have been a little handcuffed a little bit. I'm hoping that he lets off the brake pedal. Like I just, all I picture in my head is those driver's ed cars where Dabo's in the passenger seat hitting the brake on you, like start and stop. So one guy, the chance he did not put, he put Brenningstool in there. I think that's huge. Riley runs a ton, and I think these running backs, I think that might have been a reason why Maffa comes back, because he'll interchange running backs as well. So I think that's going to be huge. I think a healthy Adam Randall with a full spring is going to eat, as the kids say. I truly do. I think he has all the tools. Again, same coach that I talked to, played against this kid, said he's the best physical specimen, best wide receiver he's ever seen in this state. And that includes Antonio Williams. So I think hopefully Adam Randall can use his hands and get some separation, and those deep balls are probably going to him.
Well, that's the other thing I've written about on rubbingtherock.com, and somebody pushed back on me on Facebook a little bit. It was, it was very nice and respectful, whatever. It wasn't one of those crazy people named Casey Cregan. But I said, they don't have the players they used to have. And they've got, maybe 1 or 2, but they don't have, 8 wide receivers out there that are making the NFL on the same 6, I think it was 6 on the same team, right? I'm trying to get to Anthony Weeks' comment here. Nobody has seen Cade with the healthy Bo Collins. Good point.
You forget about him.
But if you watched, and I've been on this for a month now, and everybody caught on this last weekend. If you watched the NFL playoffs last week, every game had a Clemson stud out there, right? And not all of them were on offense. And Mike Williams was hurt, but there's Trevor Lawrence and there's Travis Etienne and there's Mike Williams, who, he was hurt. He didn't play, but everybody knows he's a superstar. There's T. Higgins. I mean, on and on and on. Clemson just does not have those guys. Sammy caught a pass. That's right. 1 pass for 12 yards, like 2 minutes into
But at Clemson, he was unreal.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is there might be 1 or 2. Maybe it's Bo Collins, maybe it's Adam Randall, but there's not the embarrassment of riches that there were. As we see, we're down at the end of the season, we're seeing a lot of the Sweeney boys and, the Suns, even though Cole Turner was great. It's just not the same. And they need to, Nelson was pushing back on some of the recruiting earlier in the cycle. And I've come around to his position. It's not the same. They've got a lot of those good guys, but there's not what it was, at least at the receiver. For me, the depth is not there, is what I'm trying to say. And I love Will Shipley. I mean, look at my shirt, but is he Travis Etienne? So that's my take.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I agree. Back then, it was who were you going to cover? I mean, heck, you could throw Martavis Bryant in there because before his off-field issues, he was as electric in the NFL as they came. It was defenses couldn't cover those three guys, whatever they were, whether it was Sammy Martavis, Nuke, Mike Williams, I mean, even Sharon Peak later on.
Right.
You had or earlier on.
Humphreys.
Yeah, I mean, they were just names that they just throwing out there, and you knew they were going to catch it too. Yes, we had generational quarterbacks, no question about it, but you also had generational wide receivers.
Yes.
Hopefully, these guys can develop, because if they develop, I think Bo Collins is as good as anybody in the country, I think, and I'm hopeful and I forget about him, but I'm hopeful that Adam Randall is that guy too, and Antonio Williams and Cole Turner and Troy Stellato. I mean, I'll throw all the names at you. Ronan Hanafin.
Didn't Stellato transfer?
Did
he? Yeah, I think so. He's going to be a stud somewhere. Hey, I'm going to steal that. If you don't use it, I'm going to steal that phrase, generational wide receivers. I should have thought of that one in that argument with that dude. It was a nice argument. It was a very, very respectful, like most internet arguments are. So that leads right into the next topic here, Casey. Will the hiring of Garrett Riley produce, and this is a little side here. I saw you push back on someone who said that Jeff Scott was back at Clemson. I saw that on the internet. I thought that was cool. Chancey says Stellato is still with Clemson.
He is. I confirmed it with my phone a minute ago too.
You guys are saying that I'm wrong?
I know. First time for everything. Mark it down. 21 minutes, 35 seconds of the 100 and whatever show.
Don't tell my wife. She thinks I'm wrong 21 times a day. Okay. Somebody transferred. Anyway, maybe he just got injured and was out for the season.
He's been injured for 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Okay. So I was only 98% wrong. Will the hiring of Garrett Riley, and we know the theoretical return of Jeff Scott will improve recruiting. I mean, that's evident if he returns. But if that doesn't happen, say we're going with just Garrett Riley and whoever, is that going to help the recruiting, do you think?
I don't. I think that's an unknown. I really do. There was an article that I read on Tiger Illustrated, right? I mean, it was like 2 days after the guy got hired. But it said there was two guys that he was recruiting. Again, don't know the names, that he has not made contact with yet. So I don't know. I mean, I know he's got to get settled in and go to the office and figure out the style, how Dabo wants him to recruit, how he what message they want to send. I get all that, but I don't like that it took a couple of days. Probably asking too much, Marty. I mean, I'm probably asking too much here, but I just don't know how he is as a recruiter. He won the Broyles Award for best assistant coach in the country. That's great for a coach, and he's only been really at, where was he? Kansas, App State, ECU, and SMU and TCU. I mean,
yeah, and all those are about a year, so it's not like he's been 5 years in each place. He's only 33 years old, right? I think.
Yeah. So I think his style. I think he's going to have to talk about his style and how that translates for a kid playing offense, a wide receiver, running back, maybe even a quarterback, probably a quarterback. However, there's a lot of unknown here as to how Garrett Riley is as a recruiter. I don't know. How about that?
Fair enough. Hey, let me throw this at you. Maybe Clemson doesn't want the type of player he was recruiting at TCU.
There's no question, because that was
different level.
That was the whole gist. He was winning with 3 and 4 stars. Now he's going to be able to play with 4 and 5 stars. So it's different. It is a different level.
All right. I've kind of mentioned this already, but John Chancey had a great piece on rubbingtherock.com, a slideshow. I think there was 4 on there that will benefit the most from the hire of Garrett Riley. Houston's piece on reinventing the offense, which I think we're all looking forward to. I mean, I'm about as eager for the spring game as I've been since Chad Morris. And I think Taj went like 4 of 22 that game or something that spring. And I was like, holy crap, what is this guy's doing? And we know how that worked out. But that was before Sammy got there and you could just throw the ball anywhere and, touchdown. So good stuff. Do you think there'll be any other staff changes? No, it's kind of late in the cycle now. We're at the mid to end of January. Everybody's selling in.
Yeah, I really don't think so. And quite honestly, I've gotten my information and my intel from pictures from recruits. And I thought maybe people that are talking about Wes Goodwin getting fired are out of their minds. I'm sorry, he was fine this year. Those linebackers that he was in charge of, I know he's in charge of the whole defense, but those linebackers got better and better every week. He couldn't stay healthy on the defensive line, and he had young kids in the back end. So I have no problem with Wes Goodwin. I really didn't, and I thought maybe the only other move that they would make would be Tyler Grisham, Tyler Grisham, at wide receiver maybe. But again, he didn't have a healthy stable either. Guys weren't getting separation. I know that's coaching, but I think he gets another year. I really do, and hopefully with the new offense, it kind of makes him look better because I know he can recruit. He is a good recruiter. He can get some guys. He really can. So I thought maybe he would go, but now that I'm seeing pictures of him on every trip with Garrett Riley and Dabo, I think we're set.
Instagram tells you the story. It tells the beef the story.
Read the tea leaves. Didn't we name a couple episodes?
Yes. Well, and there'll be more in the future. I reused the names, and you can tell by tonight's title, I couldn't come up with one for today.
It's perfect for what we're doing.
I was under pressure, and I didn't handle it well at all. Story of my life. Okay, Clemson basketball had a tough loss at Wake Forest last night, down 2 guards and having to play against, apparently, according to the internet, 5 Wake Forest players and 2 or 3 referees, depending on your point of view. I didn't see it. It looked like a lot of fouls to me. It looked like they were out of position and stumbling all over themselves. Were there bad calls? Sure, it's college sports. There's bad calls and all. Just wait till baseball. You'll see some things you never saw before in a baseball game. They're bad calls, but it wasn't like there weren't any bad calls against Wake Forest. But neither here nor there. They've been able to win without Alex Hemingway. They could not win without Chase Hunter, despite PJ Hall looking like he's going to be making a few $1 million in a couple of years. Hunter Tyson on the boards for a gangly white dude. He really hits the boards. Back in my day, it was Horace Grant. It was Horace Grant who was like 6'10". I think he weighed like 160 when he got there. And he was going, this was Michael Jordan and Sam Perkins and James Worthy days. And he would grab 10 or 11 rebounds, and you wonder how you do it. But here's what I've learned about Hunter Tyson. On our little prize picks, when it says 9.5 rebounds, take the over, because that dude is going to stumble his way into 12 rebounds or whatever. But anyway, I think they held up pretty well considering the young guards aren't ready, right? They're okay for stretches when they've got to fill in for Chase Hunter and whoever, 3 minutes at a time. But to ask them to be on the road against Wake Forest, I think Josh Beadle had 0 assists on the night. He scored 8 points, but if I remember, they were all layups and free throws. There's no jump shot there whatsoever. And I think Dylan Hunter's even less ready. He didn't score any points. Had a couple assists, if I remember correctly, but didn't score any points. So they are going to struggle if Chase Hunter's not in the game. But man, they play hard. I've done this several times on Rubbing the Rock. I give them Brad Brownell credit because they're better coached. They get the ball inbounds the last 2 games. And they get the ball inbounds in crucial situations. Remember, they would have 5-second calls and turn the ball over. This is a much better coached team. And I see JP in the comments here. JP, how you doing, bud? Beadle ain't it yet. Yeah. He played some good defense for a couple of games, but on the offensive end, he's a liability.
Yeah, and I don't think Clemson's very deep, and I think that bench shortens up even a little bit later in the ACC season and into the tournament. But again, I think the last show that we did, I love the big guys. Shefflin is he scored 2 points last night. He only had 3 boards, but man, he'll give you. He's one of those guys that reminds me of me, although way more skilled and way better. But you get 5 fouls. You can't roll them over to the next game. So, but yeah, last night I love their fight, and I hate to to use this overused phrase of Clemson basketball, but it really felt like it was a gritty game. They had to battle. They didn't have their leader. And I'm sorry that Chase Hunter is the leader of that team. As much as Hunter Tyson's been fantastic and he's probably the captain, and he's been wonderful. Chase Hunter kind of is the straw that stirs the drink, is my overused phrase that I use on this show all the time. And they still fought. They had no business of losing that game by 10. They had no business, but they kept fighting. They kept fighting. They kept playing to the final whistle. Yeah, the calls didn't go their way. It felt like for a stretch or two that every time the ball came down, there was a foul call. And I get it. I mean, there were fouls, and they weren't moving their feet, and they weren't defending the way they normally do. And again, that probably starts at the top with when your point guard and your leader's out, just getting into that position. But they fought again. They fought and fought and fought, and that's something. It reminds me of Florida State football. We haven't seen that in a Clemson team in a couple of years, really, probably since the final Sweet 16 team.
They were
they lost to a good team, Marty.
Yeah, on the road.
Yeah,
they were down by 6 points with 2 minutes to go. It was crazy.
But it felt like it was 25 points.
This
they had
team,
no business.
This team is so different than the last 15. He's only been there 13 years. Last 10 Brownell teams, maybe with the exception of the Sweet 16 team. I don't even know if that Sweet 16 team fought like this team fights. Shefflin is, as JP posted on Twitter the other day, and I put a quote to him and said he's a baller. And you said you get 5 fouls, and he might get him in 3 minutes, but he's going to get his money's worth. There's no cheap fouls from that dude. That's for sure.
I was talking to Houston the other day via text, and he was like, he got ragdolled against Duke the entire game. But the heck of an effort he gave in that Duke game, So yes, he was getting thrown all over the place and getting out-bodied. But man, he fought his tail off. I loved it.
And the thing is, he's one of those guys that may be getting ragdoll, but he doesn't even realize it, right? He's just out there balling. That's why I called him a baller, man. He's just out there. This is like a backyard game to him.
I'm sure he's smart, but man, he looks like a big dumb animal at times. And you just want to hug him, and you're like, your effort is infectious, and it's great.
Well, I knew like 9 guys like him on my high school team. That's why we were 6 and 17. Yes. Guilty. I wasn't tall enough to be that good, but anyway. JP says bingo on the fight last night was one of those games where they could have easily gotten blown out. They didn't let that happen. I agree with that. I think that's kind of what I was trying to say. And Casey, you said it perfectly. They had no business being down by 6 with 2 minutes to go. But yeah,
and I'm not saying that Chase Hunter makes a 10-point difference.
Right.
I'm not sure Clemson wins that game with Chase Hunter.
Agreed.
But the rotation looks a little better and smoother, and
he struggled recently scoring too, but he runs the offense a little better. I think Brownell even said something like there were some wild lineups out there. And then Chauncey Wiggins comes off the bench. He had 14 points the whole year. What is going on, man? It was wild. They played hard and tough. That was my note. Okay, Clemson baseball. I'm glad JP's on here because you, me, him, and whoever else wants to join us. Going to do. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Some others will. We're going to kind of plan on a Twitter Spaces around Clemson baseball. I know the 3 of us are excited about Clemson baseball coming up. Maybe I should have probably actually invited JP on tonight. No, we're going to talk about Clemson baseball
in a week or so. When we really dig into the preview, he's going to be able to help me write my article. So he can come on in a week or 2.
Sounds good. So put that on your book, JP. He's already given us a schedule, giving you your next article. Baseball coming up. Now, we talked about this briefly in the last time we got together. I have no idea what to expect. I don't know if we're looking at 14 and 42 or 42 and 14 or maybe somewhere, 28 and 28. I think that's the right math. I don't have any idea what to expect, but I'm excited about baseball. And you wrote a precursor article today, just kind of getting some names familiar, which I sincerely appreciate because I'm like, Okay. Who's that guy? Who's that guy? And baseball gets a lot less pub than the other sports when it comes to the recruits, unless they get selected and go to the minors. But anyway, I'm excited, looking forward to it. We got less than a month. JP says the first practice is next Friday, so it's almost time, Case.
Yeah, and I should have reached out to him too, because when I was doing the article that I put out on rubbingtherock.com was really just to get some names out there to kind of familiarize Clemson fans to the names that are coming back, some of the new names, some of the transfer names that are coming in. But really, I then reached back on the ClemsonTigers.com to see if they had any box scores or anything from the spring. And I know they played 15 inning games with UNCW, with ECU, a couple scrimmages, inter squad scrimmages, but I didn't get any box scores. But the name that really jumped out at me was Max Starbuck. Max Starbuck has been kind of a reserve infielder for Clemson, son of the former third base coach. And I'm surprised. Because I say that because I looked then as to who's coming back from the infield, and it's Benjamin Blackwell, Blake Wright. So you figure shortstop, second base, although Wright probably moves to third, maybe. Starbuck and Grice, they're saying Grice is going to play first, but then you get Riley Bertram, who's a transfer from Michigan, who played 62 games and 62 starts at shortstop in Michigan last year. That's an awful crowded infield. At first, when I was like, "Oh man, only 4 infielders are back," and then seeing Starbuck's name hitting well in the preseason doesn't always translate, or it's hitting well in the fall. And then I looked at the recruits, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 infield recruits, 6 of which are shortstops. Obviously, they don't translate to college shortstops, but it's like there's a crowded lineup here as to who's going to get playing time. So again, I just wrote this to kind of get names out there, to kind of familiarize myself. It was very self-serving of an article, but just to know who's coming back, how many innings, how many games they've played, where they've played, that kind of thing. So I'm excited though. I sat down. This took me, there's 3 pages right here that I have in front of me, which translates to a lot of words on rubbingtherock.com. But it took me about 20 minutes to write the piece, and then more time to research it.
There's just a lot of I don't know if intrigue's the right word or what, but we got guys transferring to South Carolina. We got Monty Lee at South Carolina. Guys transferring to other places. Guys coming from Michigan. He's pulling these guys. Bakich is pulling these guys from all over the United States. When Monty Lee was pretty much South Carolina, Georgia, every now and then a Florida guy or whatever, but Southeast, let's say, with an occasional exception. But Bakich has these guys from all over the place. And Michigan's an obvious one. I think there's a Missouri or Illinois maybe
New
guy.
Hampshire.
Yeah, just wow. So I'm ready for it, man. I'm ready for that first game. I've already called in sick that day because it starts at like 2:00 in the afternoon here in Texas, right? So I've already called in sick that day. So
I think there's a lot of. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask JP. I don't know if you have anything else to add, JP, to what we're saying, but we're excited. I know you are too, and I'm going to get that Twitter Spaces together. Hopefully, it's something we can do throughout the season.
It's kind of like the Garrett Riley thing, baseball style, except this is the head coach with Eric Bakich coming in, and he's recruiting his tail off. Every time you turn around, he's getting some other kid from whether it's in state or out of state to commit to him. He's 2 years down the road already, which is awesome. I think his next class is already in the top 15 for next year. And I think the one piece that people are going to either really like or not really like is that there's a familiar name. And it's funny because in the official ClemsonTigers.com that comes from Sports Information Director, it says that Jack Leggett is in his first year at Clemson as a program development. So he's going to be around the program. He's got an official title with the program. So love him or hate him. Or don't like, I don't know who can hate him, but love him or don't like him. He's going to be around. Old 7's going to be running around somewhere.
I will say this. I don't think I ever hate him. I have no reason to hate him, but I was ready for him. I loved him when they were good. Didn't like him so much when they weren't, and they refused to change and weren't very competitive. And I thought the game had passed him by. Maybe I'm wrong. I was excited for Monty Lee. I thought that's what baseball is now. And to some extent it is. Even in the college game, Tennessee hit, 528 home runs. They didn't win the national championship, though. And that's the goal, right? So, maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe, the game had passed him by to some extent, but maybe we went too far the other way. And you know what they always say about the coaches, right? When you hire one and it doesn't work, you tend to go to the other side, the opposite type of coach. Like if he's a defensive coach, you go and hire somebody on the offensive side. So maybe we'll see something different. I want to see good baseball is what I want to see. As we talked about offline, I want to see fundamental baseball. I'm old dude, right? I want to see fundamental baseball, bunts, as you talked about, ad nauseum, sacrifices, and running the bases. I want to see guys not get thrown out by 4 miles 6 times a game. There's a way to be aggressive and not look foolish, and I think that's what they need to do. They made mistakes, Casey, that I would not make as a high schooler.
Yeah, that was frustrating. There was games that were frustrating, straight up frustrating last year.
JP says Jack is at the very least working with the hitters. I've already seen him in uniform back in the fall, all smiles, headed to the batting cages. Yep, I think that's what he wanted. And hey, like you said, love him or don't like him, one thing you can't argue is that man loves Clemson baseball.
He's a legend. He's a legend at Clemson. His uniform is, if it's not, it will be retired. One thing that I did notice too in the game notes of this fall ball was stolen bases. Caden Grice had 3. I think it was a freshman that's coming in. Cam Canarella from Hartsville, South Carolina. He had 9 stolen bases in 2 games. I mean, right off the bat, just those 2 sentences, and I heard angels singing behind my head. Like, they're going to be aggressive on the base paths as long as they're smart. I mean, maybe that says something about Cooper Engel's arm not being ready to go, but or whoever they were running on. But they're running the bases already, which I love to see.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying they should never get thrown out on the bases. That's going to happen. When you steal a lot of bases, you're going to get caught. Sometimes you're going to try and go first and third, and you're going to get caught. But do it smartly. Like, I think one time last year they had a chance to have second and third and nobody out. Instead, they had a guy on first and 2 outs. Like that.
There's a difference between being aggressive on the base paths and just being flat out dumb.
Reckless and dumb. Beef, we've done 43 minutes in our first show back. So that sounds like something you'd say on the chopping beef. Are you chopping beef this week?
Hopefully.
Okay.
It's doubtful, but hopefully.
All right. One of your many podcasts you do, but I'm thankful that we had this time. It's a lot of fun. We ought to do this. Hey, next Wednesday,
I'm available.
Okay, I think I am too. Things got a little busy for me these days, but we'll work it out. It sounds like fun, man. Tell the people thank you, and let's get out of here. Chancey, Anthony Weeks, Kevron, JP, John Chancey. I think I already said that. We appreciate you, man. And Beef is going to say thanks.
No thanks to Zach Locks Parker, but hope you get better, pal. And on the
better,
men, had a little surgery. Thanks to everyone in the Seldom Used Reserve College Football Discussion Facebook group. Uncle John McGee, who already liked the Facebook post earlier today. As always, Sluggo Podcast, and each and every one of you who listens, likes, shares, and participates. On behalf of Marty, Seldom Used Reserve Coleman, I am Casey the Beef Creek, and thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to check out rubbingtherock.com, and we'll see you next week right here on Sluggo.
rubbingtherock.com.
I think we're done here.